Hello, Bree. Welcome back to It's Called Football. And it's finally that time again. And it is that time of the year where we see the return of the most popular and the most well-known league in world football, the Premier League of England. Right? The top division of English football has been around for decades, in fact, more than a century now. And a lot of these teams are very, very well known, not just to followers of the English game, but even to fans that just have a little bit of interest in the game or have just heard names in passing. These currently are the logos of the teams that will be in the coming 23-24 season of the Premier League. If you don't know them all, don't worry, we'll be covering a lot of them in detail as the season goes on. And there are some big differences you should know about the Premier League compared to the rest of English football, which we covered in our video last week before their seasons began. For that video, please feel free to check out our channel where we posted a preview of the 23-24 season for the Championship, League One, League Two, and the National League. But moving on, the focus of this week, the Premier League. The main difference between the Premier League to the lower divisions is that where those teams had 24 teams occupying the different divisions, this one only has 20 teams that make up the league. The other difference is that while all those other leagues saw 3 teams or 4 teams or 2 teams promoted and relegated from those divisions to upper or lower leagues, the only change we really see in the Premier League is that the bottom 3 teams get relegated down to the Championship, whereas the top 3 teams from the Championship come up to the Premier League. We don't really see any promotion up to any division from the Premier League. However, there are some rewards that work for the top teams in this division. We will talk more about that in a later video. Some of the big names you might recognize, even if you are just a fan in passing of football, are usually near the top of the table. So your likes of Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, Newcastle United, and in recent times, Chelsea and Manchester City have been occupying those spots as well. Tottenham Hotspur have been a reasonably big name as well in recent times, but as you can see, based on the table here and the finishes of each team last season, there were a few surprises last time around. Tottenham Hotspur fell a little below what would be expected of them by their own fans, and Chelsea had a little bit of a horror season, finishing in 12th last season. The likes of Manchester City, Arsenal, Manchester United, and Liverpool did quite well. Liverpool had a little bit of a disappointing season by their own standards, given how they performed over the last few years. Manchester United started a little poorly last year, but managed to buck the trend and come back up. Arsenal had one of the best seasons in their history, topping the table for 248 days, but ultimately falling short to the behemoths at the moment, Manchester City, who have now won the last 3 Premier League seasons, including winning a treble last season. Newcomers into the league are shown there in 18th, 19th, and 20th, Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton Town. Burnley had a sensational season in the Championship last season under new manager Vincent Kompany. He absolutely stormed the division, destroyed so many records in the league, and Burnley had an easy time securing their spot in the Premier League as champions of the Championship. The biggest story, however, is Luton Town, who have been gradually progressing over the last decade or so, and they came all the way from non-league football, like from the National League levels, all the way up now to the Premier League without huge expenditure, without spending way too much on new players coming in. It is a real feel-good story that, again, we are going to cover in great detail as Luton deserve at a later date. So let's get right into the match day 1 fixtures. We kick off on Friday. We are now officially just about half a day or so away. By the time you listen to this, there will be just a few hours left until the Premier League kicks off. We start with newcomers Burnley hosting the champions Manchester City on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We then see the bulk of the games take place on Saturday, as is normal for English football. We start with Arsenal hosting Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth hosting West Ham, Luton Town travelling to Brighton and Hove Albion, who had another excellent season by their standards, and Everton hosting Fulham. The matchday one fixtures then continue with Sheffield United hosting Crystal Palace as well on Saturday, and Aston Villa travelling up to Newcastle. Sunday sees the fixtures continue with a London derby as Tottenham Hotspur travel away to Brentford, and then the big clash Chelsea against Liverpool, before the first round of fixtures concludes on Monday with Manchester United hosting Wolves. Now, there are plenty of little stories here and there with so many of these teams. This transfer window has been one of the most hectic and active in recent memory, with so many different clubs in the market for different reasons and huge transfers happening, including right up to this very moment. But the featured match of match day one in the Premier League comes on Sunday, where we see Chelsea host Liverpool. These two teams have not had too many goals scored in their last few meetings. In fact, their last four meetings against each other have all ended in nil-nil draws. So while the scorelines might not seem overly flattering between these two sides, they are always very tightly contested matches. There's a lot of talent in both teams, and there is going to be a little extra fire connected to this match on Sunday because as recently as an hour ago, reports have broken that a player who Chelsea had been pursuing in the transfer market, Moises Caicedo, has instead chosen at the 11th hour to join Liverpool. That sort of transfer details should be final and confirmed by Friday before the first match kicks off. But the history between these two has now gone up a level because this one player that Chelsea have wanted for quite a long time over the last few months, due to their shambolic performances last season, they have now been dealt a killer blow right before the season kicks off as Liverpool snatched the player they wanted right from under their noses. So it is going to be very exciting to see what happens in this matchup. You can expect probably a few rough tackles, rough words exchanged, and hopefully this time we'll see a few goals in this match. There are also other big fixtures as well, for sure. You can expect that Manchester United want to start this season strongly. They've strengthened quite well. Arsenal will want to mount another title challenge after last time and losing out in the last couple of weeks of the season, while Manchester City will be bidding to go for a fourth straight Premier League title. Now, there are lots and lots of different stories that are ready to take place over the season, and we cannot wait here at It's Called Football to see them unfold. Like we said, the biggest one, Luton Town, against all the odds over the last 9 or 10 years, they have managed to come up the ranks all the way from the National League through League Two, League One, the Championship, and last summer they managed to win the playoff round against Coventry City in a penalty shootout to secure their spot in the Premier League. An amazing story, and we really hope that Luton have a great season. It would be fantastic to see them stay up. On the flip side of Luton's kind of stories, we've got some of our top clubs, Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, and Liverpool. By their standards, all three of them had relatively poor seasons. Liverpool, who had spent about 4 or 5 years consistently challenging for the Premier League title, winning other honours, and pushing Manchester City all the way, had a season where they dropped down to fifth. And by their standards, it was an really, really appalling season. They will be hoping that they have a much better season this time around, and they have made some very smart acquisitions and brought new players in who should be able to help them with that. Like we said, one of them being Moises Caicedo, very talented midfielder that Chelsea also wanted, and now Chelsea are lacking a player in that position who can perform the role to the standard they would expect. Chelsea had probably the worst season of a top club in recent times. They are normally a club also expected to be in the top 3 or 4 in the division, challenging for the league title, and they finished in 12th, which is the lowest that a top side has finished in recent memory. They will be hoping to make a push back for the top spots where they feel they belong, and it is going to be a very competitive season if they do manage to get their squad right this time. On the flip side of clubs who didn't necessarily have a good season, we have some surprise clubs who well and truly shocked everybody in the league and had stellar seasons last time. Brighton and Hove Albion is one of them who ended up finishing in sixth last season, their highest finish. They are now going to be playing European football in the coming season, which again we will go into once the European matches start. Newcastle United have had a real surge in recent years, gradually strengthening very smartly in the market, and they ended up finishing a very, very respectable fourth place in the league last season, much better than most of their recent finishes have been over the last several years. But the biggest story last time was probably Aston Villa. Although they finished below Newcastle and Brighton, Aston Villa finished in seventh last season. Their story is still incredible because about halfway through the season, they were sitting down in 17th. They brought in a new manager, and he managed to get the squad right, get the tactics right, and get them results that propelled them into a European spot. Admittedly, the third tier of European football, but it is still a fantastic achievement. These three clubs are going to want to make sure that their performances last season were not a fluke and were not a one-off. They're going to want to prove to everybody that they're here to stay at the top level. Now, obviously, there are other stories that are set to come up in this league season, the biggest of which, Erling Haaland. If you don't know him, those of you that play EA Sports' FIFA franchise and plan to buy the new game, you'll see him on the cover. Erling Haaland is, for his age, a fantastic young player, 22 years old, and basically broke every goal scoring record in the English Premier League last season. He was the dominant force that led Manchester City to their treble, where they ended up winning the Premier League, the Domestic Cup, which is the FA Cup, and the UEFA Champions League for the first time in their history. Erling Haaland is settled in. His first season showed no signs of needing to acclimatize to the way English football is different from the other divisions and the other leagues he's played in. And now that he's in his second season, used to the league and already used to getting trophies, it is going to be very interesting to see whether he pushes on, whether he maintains his level, or whether he has a bit of a dip. On the other end of the table, we have David Moyes, the coach of West Ham United, a club that did win the third tier European competition at the end of last season, known as the Europa Conference League. However, West Ham have not really invested very much. They've lost key players. They might still lose some more. They lost Declan Rice to Arsenal already earlier this summer, and there are talks that they are going to lose another one of their stars, a Brazilian player known as Lucas Paqueta. He is on the verge of potentially joining Manchester City as well. So David Moyes has a real task on his hands, and there are strong concerns that West Ham may not survive this season. It's very possible that they may get relegated, and he will need to do a real job with his squad to make sure that they stay up and stay comfortable the way they did last season towards the back end. Now, there are other managers who are going to be pushing for a title race and potentially trying to dethrone Manchester City. Mikel Arteta, coach of Arsenal, led them to a huge revitalization over the last 3 years or so. He came very close to leading Arsenal to the league title. Ultimately, they fell short due to lacking enough depth compared to their first choice 11 of players. Arsenal have addressed those concerns. They've brought in Declan Rice, as mentioned before, from West Ham, but have also brought in Kai Havertz from rivals Chelsea and have brought in Jurriën Timber from Ajax. All very smart acquisitions. It is rumored that David Raya from Brentford is also on the way for this season. So Arsenal should have a very strong competitive squad where the players push each other to reach new levels. If they can do that, there is a chance they might get to Manchester City's level or eclipse them. Erik ten Hag, coach of Manchester United, had a similar job, did an excellent revamp of the squad, and got them results with players who you could argue are maybe not at the level of Manchester United all over the pitch. However, he's also made some very smart buys. He replaced long-standing goalkeeper David De Gea with Andre Onana, getting him from Inter Milan. These two have worked together before. Ten Hag was the coach of Andre Onana at Ajax back in the day in the Netherlands. So he has strengthened his team as well. They might be bringing in more players. They have also brought a new striker in from an Italian club. The striker is called Rasmus Højlund, and although he is currently injured, there are talks that he is the next big thing. So it's rumored to let's see if the rumors are true. The final story that we're curious to see is how Fulham perform. Their coach, Marco Silva, was reportedly offered a huge contract by the Saudi Arabian club Al Ahly, and we don't know yet whether his head might be turned by that, whether that might affect Fulham's performances. They had a good season last year, but there are some internal issues at the club. One of their strikers also seems hesitant to want to play for the club anymore. And obviously, the coach, there are worries that he might have his head turned and it might not be fully in the game. So we do want to wait and see what happens with Fulham. It should be interesting. I think that they should still have enough to stay up, but you never know what can happen in a squad if heads are turned and the focus isn't there, especially if the focus is lost from the main coach. So let us know if you have any particular predictions for the season. Maybe you've got thoughts as to who might get relegated, who might finish as the top of the league at the end of the season in May, or maybe you have other stories that you just want us to cover. But whatever they might be, please let us know in the comments, and we'd be very happy to hear from you and cover any of the stories that you might want us to cover. But for now, we look forward to a fantastic new season, hopefully, in the Premier League as it all kicks off with Burnley against Manchester City on Friday. And we will be back soon with recapping what happened in match day one in the lower leagues as well as match day one of the Premier League. And I think that's it for today. So we will see you again soon. And just remember, like always, it's called football.